and on the ground. Thank you.
High Representative.
Well, your question has a lot to do with what was asked in the previous question, and inevitably the response will be very similar to my previous response. Now, the mission that has been undertaken on the Armenian side of the border is a very important part of our efforts in order to try to make progress in the peace process, essentially, between the two countries. But it is exclusively of a civilian nature. It is not an armed mission, so to say. And all the members of that particular mission, including the commander there, are civilians. They're not military personnel that have a 2-year mandate. They have 100 people, which have been quickly deployed, and we feel that an important contribution is being made as far as the normalization in the border region. We also feel that it's contributing to facilitate the efforts that are being made, and to those to which I made reference earlier on in the process, which has been initiated by the President of the Council in order to promote for normalization between the two countries. But this particular mission has very, very clear delineated limits. It is not a peace process. It is part of the process of peace, limited by the civilian character that it has, limited by the fact that it can only be active on the Armenian side of the border. Azerbaijan has not allowed for the mission to be active on its side of the border. And please don't ask for things that cannot be done by the mission. It does what it can, but it can't do more outside of its remit. And it, of course, outside of the capabilities that it has as far as logistics and resource as well. Now, the Lachin corridor, the efforts that are being made and the activities that are being undertaken there are contrary to the peace effort being made. We've asked for Azerbaijan and the international community has asked Azerbaijan to allow for access to Nagorno-Karabakh through this particular checkpoint under the auspices of the United Nations right now. We've asked for that, but we do not have coercive powers or the force to be able to call for that beyond what we've done.
Oui, juste un mot pour confirmer.
Well, just briefly to say that together with those present here, you're probably going to get quite a lot of similar questions on this topic, but this shows that we want to draw attention to the situation. That's why we wanted to have this point. I understand that it's not a peace mission, but my question was about the humanitarian conditions and sanitary conditions on the ground. We've heard that the Red Cross no longer has access to the area, 120,000 people, 30,000 children, lives at risk. That's why we are asking these types of questions on the diplomatic sides, but also on the specific humanitarian issues as well.
Thank you very much. High Representative, to respond.
I share your concern, ladies and gentlemen. I know that the socioeconomic situation in the affected communities is very serious indeed. And over the last 2 years, we have initiated a number of different projects and programs for humanitarian aid with the services of ECHO as well. We've participated. 17 million euros have been earmarked for that. Of course, that hasn't resolved the problem, but at least we take note of the fact that indeed we are doing things there. A number of different projects, once again, undertaking with those 17 million euro invested in order to provide for emergency services, healthcare services, including psychological support, medical equipment, and urgent assistance for individuals affected by the conflict. And indeed, we're doing demining of the region. Much is being done on that particular front. Recently, we also launched an additional project in order to demine areas in the Armenian territory as well. So I understand. I indeed share your concerns, and of course more could be done. But please allow me to say that indeed we are doing something at least. And I think indeed that ought to be recognized. It is, of course, illustrated by the funds earmarked.
We move on to the Renew Group, and I give the floor to Karen Melchior.
Formand, mange tak, høje repræsentant. Armenien og Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much. Armenia and Azerbaijan have got a peace agreement in place which includes an agreement over Nagorno-Karabakh. So there is not a conflict, rather you have a peace agreement where the Lachin corridor is part of it. However, there is no access to the Lachin corridor. Is there an interpreting problem? Does it work? Can you hear me? Yes, the Lachin corridor is part of the peace agreement where access to Nagorno-Karabakh is stated clearly so that goods and other products can arrive. But at the moment there is a blockade. There needs to be an international observatory to verify how access can be provided. The agreement is not being respected. So how can we ensure respect for this agreement that was concluded between Azerbaijan and Armenia? Frozen conflicts can rapidly thaw and become very dangerous. There was an agreement on Ukraine, for example, which ended up with a Russian attack on Ukraine. How can we ensure that this agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan is actually respected in practice?
Thank you very much. High Representative, to respond.
Gracias, señoría. Ya me gustaría a mí.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have the ability to be able to make sure that the agreements that are forged between the various parts, that they are indeed implemented in a sustainable, in a permanent fashion. But unfortunately, that's not the way things are. Sometimes agreements end up in some sort of deadlock situation or quagmire, and it doesn't work out. And frequently there aren't those possibilities of implementing the agreement, and we have these types of situations. Well, a wonderful example of that is what's going on at the checkpoint. All pressure has been exerted through the United Nations so that this checkpoint justified for very, very clear reasons because of the geography there as well, that we don't have a blockage, in other words, and allow for people and goods to be able to go back and forth to Nagorno-Karabakh, to the people in that particular enclave. Now, that might be a bit optimistic, or maybe one has to be a bit optimistic, because step by step, through partial implementation, we have avoided to a war, to conflict reigniting in the region. In other words, to armed conflict once again. We don't have victims, at least right now, and we hope that the diplomatic efforts that are being made, that they maintain this situation of relative tranquility on the ground as the negotiations take place and continue. Thank you.
Karen Melchior for a follow-up question.
Tusind tak for deres svar. Jeg ved godt, at vi...
Yes, thank you very much for your response. Well, I do understand that we can't ask for miracles, but at the very least, we cannot ensure respect for international law, it seems. When it comes to prisoners of war from Azerbaijan, they don't even have telephone contact with their families. They are not being returned, and what can we do so that these prisoners of war can be reunited with their families?
Thank you very much. High Representative, any comments?
Sí, tampoco le satisfará mi pregunta.
Well, I'm sure you won't like my answer, but I don't have any other to give you. all we can do in these types of situations is to continue with negotiations to put the problem that you raised on the table as part of the agreements. That was done with Moldova, and that's what will be done in the upcoming meetings.